Hey everybody, welcome to a T15 game played by Psykmoe. I also have a T15, I just don't play it very much because I haven't quite been able to figure it out yet. That and I don't play low tiers very much anymore. So as you can see, Psykmoe has found himself in a match against a pair of 2Js platooned up, and they're actually halfway decent players. So they're going to be a problem. 2Js against low tier pubbies tend to be pretty much just murder. They are pennable, but low tier pubbies don't know how to pen them, so in all likelihood they will just drive across the field and murder everybody. The T15 is a really interesting little tank, built by Skoda. It's got a really weird suspension, which is actually quite fun to watch in action, so I hope that they do the HD remodel for this tank fairly soon. It'd be nice to see that with the deforming tracks and everything. But it is the little brother of the T25, the Tier 5 Premium. So here's one 2J coming through the swamp. Now, just recently I uploaded a video, I'm not sure if it's public yet by the time this one is, I honestly can't even remember, but I detailed why you don't go through the swamp on this map and why it's a really bad idea, and that still holds true even in the 2J. Do not go through the swamp on Nalista, it is just suicide. So his little friend goes down. Psykmoe's playing a little more carefully when it comes to the 2J, because it can still pen him and he's going to have difficulty with it. Gets it through the side there, but the 2J is now starting to angle, which is going to make it a pain to pen even with gold. And it's also got a 35T in support. As you can see, the rest of his team is mostly bottled up in their base, which is not a good start. That means that as the other 2J rolls across the field in a moment, it's just going to have them all bottled up there, trapped, and it's going to work them down one by one. So realising that the pick and poke isn't really being productive over here, Psykmoe decides to move. But the 2J gets distracted by somebody else, which allows Psykmoe to come up and pop at the side of the turret, which is actually quite thinly armoured. It remains fixated on its new targets, and so Psykmoe can take it out quite safely. And then he's just got to deal with the 35T here, which is not too hard. By now the other 2J has made it actually into the far corner of the base. It's got a T18 in support, which is tracked momentarily, and so Psykmoe is able to put some fire on that. The T18 is of course one of the most overpowered tanks in the game. Not for long though, it's getting brutally nerfed, so that should fix the problem of T18 seal clubbing somewhat. Known as Death's Television in some circles, which is probably one of my favourite nicknames for any tank in the game. The last few guys up on the hill have been cleaned up, but Psykmoe knows he has some time to go handle the 2J over here, and he needs to before the rest of his team suicide into it one at a time. The 2J's gun doesn't have a lot of pen, I think it's the Panzer II stock gun, but it does have extremely good soft stats. It reloads very quickly, it has excellent gun handling. The 2J can fire on the move without any real accuracy loss, which is really something for an autocannon. It's quite unique. Rather than engage the thing head-on, which is what's been getting his teammates killed, Psykmoe decides to leave it for now and work his way around. Aside from the fact this is a low tier game, so people have much lower spotting ranges and worse crews, it's also quite late game, so the remaining tanks are spread all over the place. They're not going to be able to spot for each other. He knows where the 2J is, he has an idea where the other guys in the enemy team are, so he works his way around the hill here, keeping terrain between himself and the 2J, such as these bushes, that rock, and then he dives into a gully at the end. The 2J hasn't spotted him, so he'll be able to come up beside or behind it without it actually knowing he's there. It won't proxy him until it's already late, already too late even. So there we go. The 2J cannot really handle being circle strafed, it's just too slow. And he manages to kill it without taking any hits. If you watch a chat here for a second, one of the pubbies says that it has no weak spots. Psykmoe makes a very good point, which is that its main weakness is its slowness. You can simply decide not to engage it and just drive away. There's nothing it can really do to stop you. The 2J cannot chase you down, nor can it hit you from any kind of range. If you just run away from a 2J, there's nothing it can do to keep you there, except try and perma-track you. So if you see one coming and you don't think you can handle it, just go somewhere else. Go away, leave it alone. It's not going to go anywhere in a hurry. The other point though is the 2J actually does have weak spots. Its drivers and radio man's observation slits are weak spots. They can be penned by many tier 2 and 3 tanks. Essentially the entire frontal arc except the gun mantlet can be penned by 45mm APCR. That's from the MS-1, all the BT series tanks. Anything with that Soviet low tier 45mm gun can pen a 2J frontally if it has gold ammo. It also has those 2 round hatches, the escape hatches on the sides of the hull. Those are also weak spots. They're slightly thinner armor than the rest of the sides. I think they're 40mm as opposed to 50, and so you can pen them there from beside. Also 50mm isn't really as much as it sounds in low tier, so if you get beside or behind it you can pen it, you just need to be perpendicular and aim well. The real strength of the 2J is that most of the really overpowered low tier tanks can't do much to it. The T-18 for instance has a lot of trouble penning it, even with heat, with HE. In either case it's not going to do a lot of damage to it. Whereas some of the tanks that people tend to overlook at low tiers, for instance the medium Mark III, can pen it very easily. The 2-pounder is a very, very good gun. Can pen Tigers if you aim well. Actually, the strongest tank for taking on the 2J is the Tetrarch because of its mixture of speed and the excellent 2-pounder gun with the device I can't remember the name of, named after I think a Polish designer. If it was any other time of the day I'd be able to name it, it's just I just woke up, so. But I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, the little squeeze bore adapter that goes on the end of the barrel. The same thing the Matilda gets when it's fully upgraded. Sorry about the bleep blooping, I forgot to mute Steam again. Anyway, it looks like Psykmoe's team are happy to let him just go clean up, which is perhaps not the best spirit of teamwork, but he is capable of doing it. Again, he's keeping terrain between himself and the enemy so he can flank around them without them knowing, which is as critical at low tiers as it is in higher tiers, if not more so, because there's so little margin for error in these low tier tanks. That's why you carry an automatic extinguisher on every tank, including low tier. The T-15 is actually quite a nice little tank. I need to play mine more often. It's fast, it's maneuverable, its gun is actually okay. It's certainly not the best in tier, but it's not bad. And I mean, it's just a neat looking little tank, and I really like that suspension. It's just fun to watch. I'm a sort of mechanically minded person, so things like that are really, really interesting to me. It's the little details that make things fun. Actually, that brings me to a point that I don't believe I've made before. If you watch the preview video that Wargaming did for when they eventually implement the suspensions on all the tanks, nice little goalie kill there. Beautiful way of dealing with that guy, that's why you know how much your tank weighs. But in the preview that Wargaming did, they showed the suspensions they'd done for various tanks. They were talking about the reworked movement models with things like gear changes, steering mechanisms, all that taken into account. Now, I've spoken about this before, I think on my blog. I don't know if I've said anything in videos, but I'm hoping it's just a visual thing. It's not going to change the gameplay too much, because anyone here who's played War Thunder, or indeed any tank game that actually simulates the way a tank handles, that kind of thing is not going to sit well with the way World of Tanks plays. It slows your gameplay down a lot more. Things like circle strafing and stopping and reversing and side scraping, it's all going to go out the window with that, because you can't instantly shift from forward gears to reverse gears and pivot on the spot and do all the things you would normally do in World of Tanks. Indeed, if you've played War Thunder any time recently, the controls are really finicky, and I would say even War Thunder doesn't accurately simulate a World War II tank. It tries, but they miss quite a few aspects. If you want a good idea of how a clutch and brake early war tank handles, it's one of the few things Red Orchestra 2 actually did right. Of course, the other suggestion would be to go and actually drive one, but obviously that's not possible for everybody. But it would seriously affect the gameplay in this. But going back to my original point, they did show the suspension for the T26, which they said was probably their biggest challenge in getting the suspensions to work, because the Vickers light tank had a very bizarre and complex suspension arrangement, which you can see on the T26, the T46, all the license-built Vickers light tanks and derivatives in the game, which is actually quite a lot of the low tiers. And the funny thing was, actually, when I went and played War Thunder and jumped in the T26, the road wheels move, so they've simulated that aspect of the suspension. But the actual suspension arms don't move, so the road wheels just bob up and down, clipping through the suspension arms, which looks really, really weird. And when Wargaming actually showed it in action, it looked a lot closer to what that suspension should look like. So I don't know if Gaijin are just hoping to sort of go back and fix it later or what, but so far Wargaming have got some brownie points in my book for actually properly doing the suspensions. I think that's probably one of my favourite little small features that's been added to the game lately. I mean, it's a purely cosmetic feature. It doesn't really affect anything, but it's just nice to watch, particularly if you've died and you're waiting for platoon mates to come out of the game. You can just watch the tanks driving over rough ground. It's nice. I like it. But that's me. I'm a giant nerd who likes to actually figure out how these things work, which is part of the reason I know, I have an idea about the in-game stats for tank, but I tend to know more about how it operated historically. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you're thinking about getting a T15, I would say you should probably get it. It's a pretty fun little tank. I don't believe it gets preferential matchmaking, but I could be wrong. I'd have to go check. Either way, its gun isn't that bad, and its agility is actually really quite good. So you have got the tools you need to survive in a tier 5 game, regardless of whether it actually sees them or not. In its own tier, I mean, if it ends up in a tier 3 game, it's going to beat up on everything. It's kind of like the Tetrarch. It's fast, its gun is actually quite good in tier. It's also quite small, so it's a difficult target to hit. Average hit points for tier 260, yeah, it's not bad. I mean, the armor's not anything to write home about, but it's a tier 3 light tank, so you really shouldn't be expecting that. And I don't know, it's just an interesting little tank to play. So I would say if you were thinking about getting one, you may as well go ahead and do it. It's not like low tier light tanks cost much anyway. Hopefully in the near future I will remember to bring mine out more, so you might be seeing a little more of it. But thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. As ever, there'll be more coming, and I wish you luck, and I will catch you next time. Thank you and goodbye.